Dude, alternative media, it's on the rise.
So I'm interested in asking some questions about like the intellectual property aspects of your work.
Oh yeah, I haven't brought any of those up yet.
Yeah, because a lot of people, of course, focus on the fact that it's a creation of weapons.
Yeah.
But I think one of the ideas that makes it so unique is that it's something that's shared for everybody. You're not trying to profit off of it.
That's right.
You're not trying to restrict it. So if you could tell us, like, I guess the property, the intellectual property that you created, so to speak, you're not allowed to distribute at this point. So can you just give like a background of what it is that's being restricted?
That's the real problem, that there are these great regimes of intellectual property in biotech and electronics and armament which prevent really like not only the development but especially the publication or the cross, kind of sharing of raw information related to the development of these technologies. And there's no exception in armament, and the kind of irony is that we think that we have the right to keep and bear and to access and to make these weapons, but the United States government has kind of covertly, in the regulatory landscape, crafted for itself an exclusive monopoly position, which is intellectual property, a kind of Cold War IP regime, which says all munitions developed in the United States by people that are United States citizens are our exclusive property, and you must ask our permission first before you ever do anything with that information. And there's subtle things in the gun community you can do to learn this. When you go kind of look at like a Magpul grip or something like in the gun store, you'll see like, oh, this article is a defense article subject to blah 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 and some statutory scheme. Well, that's about the export control regime, which is a large IP regime. What we're finding is a lot of companies in San Francisco are running to the same idea, even though they're not an armament, like Coursera and some of these other online educational projects. The problem is we have a Cold War legal superstructure, which is trying to kind of make sense of and provide gateways for the internet itself. 8, 9 bureaucrats, right, trying to police billions of people sharing these certain files. We know that it's a kind of inevitably stupid endeavor, but like it's a very real thing that involves real power.
And so there are people that are sharing your designs even though you're currently not capable of hosting them publicly.
That's right. I mean, we put our stuff out into the internet, served as many downloads as possible in the kind of 48 hours, especially after Liberator, that we were allowed to do it. Before that, we served millions of downloads, well, over a million. And now it's left to the file sharing sites and those kind of brave seeders who have ideology, I guess.
Do you know the risks that hang over the heads of people who are sharing the files?
There are risks, but they are not great. The State Department does consider some of, if you're to take what they call controlled information and to kind of rebroadcast the information, yeah, you're as equally guilty as I am of putting that into the public domain and not getting approval, doing something illegal. So there is a small risk to run, but again, it's this kind of like fraction of like, regulatory capability divided by a number of seeders. There's a very small chance, one diminishing, rapidly, that anything will come to you because of what you've done, seeding the files.
Mm-hmm. And there haven't been anybody charged or accused of having criminally shared files at this point?
To date, there's been no administrative action, no administrative progress on what we've done. So it's this, the cynical answer is that was kind of the point, to kind of squelch what we were doing while we were in our stride, while we were publishing files, getting money, putting things into the internet. To use this process to kind of fill a gap that gun law and social program couldn't kind of like prevent. We'll use foreign policy to stop them because nothing else will. Our kind of point is that there is no legal structure or strategy or maze of regulations that can prevent the publication of these ideas and this information.
Now, is it specifically the blueprints that one would plug into a 3D printer that are illegal, or if you were to write out a text, just a text directions of how to do it?
It's a great legal question, and of course the facts of that are, that's a question that can only be answered by a judge or a court, right? There's certain legal authorities which say like, well, pure information isn't speech the same way that, raw code isn't speech the same way that like a drawing is or like a sentence is. We're going to have to roughly legally analogize. Is a 3D printed STL file machine readable data that's just kind of code that a machine operates by, or is it something kind of higher with an artistic level that has a kind of speech purpose or immanence? These are metaphysical and legal questions that have yet to be determined.
And as somebody who releases work into the public domain directly, is there any concern of yours that the information you're putting out there and the plans you're putting out there will just be patented by someone else with minor tweaks, in which case other people couldn't use them?
Excellent question. When we began Defense Distributed, it was like, well, shit, if we just put some of this stuff out there into the public domain, it'll just kind of be like reabsorbed by the Googles of the gun industry, and they're like, oh, it's our stuff now, stop sharing our stuff. That was never so great a concern with receivers and magazines, because those things are already based off of, let's say, open source or public domain information that's been out there a long time, Eugene Stoner's AR-15, M16 designs. But when it came to the Liberator, that was such the calculus changed, and our real concern was, well, one strategy they can have is to just kind of play IP games with us, assert some kind of patent on it and then prevent us from sharing it. So we asserted the most minimal kind of license possible. I think it was like a version of an MIT license. We said like, attribution, don't change it without, saying you changed it. And then we said something like copyright is theft, and then we put it out there. So we asserted some kind of copyright just in case someone wanted to play games. Because we were worried about that possibility.
And looking to the future, are you interested in trying to pioneer or perfect 3D printed firearms, or do you feel that you've opened the door and you want to win more of the intellectual property battle that's been put out there?
I don't know. There's so many fronts available to the digital libertarian, and there's only so much time. So I don't really feel a need to kind of perfect an ideal form of some of these guns, this technology. What we were doing was enough of a conversation and Firestarter. That all that process, if it is one, will continue. I'm interested in new materials. I think there's still some things yet to do with some of the new machines that are out, especially this year. Things I probably couldn't have even done a few months ago, but I think I'll be able to do in a couple months' time, that are worth doing. Even if I can't publish the files, I can kind of create them and put them in video and kind of like, again, return the idea back to the system and instill the kind of same kind of fear that, Jesus, events are on the march again, like revolution continues. That's still kind of worthy propaganda and something I might return to.
And I guess it's inevitable at some point that a Liberator or 3D firearm, a printed firearm, is going to be used in some sort of act of violence, whether it's defensive or offensive.
Surely. I think it's still kind of in the realm of hobby and oddity and trivium. But at some point, someone's going to, much more likely it'll be like a pistol frame, a receiver, and a rifle. They'll say, "Oh my God, this crime was done with a ghost gun of a printed gun someone just put together in his basement. We had no idea, And it will be used as, whether it was intentional or whether it was kind of influenced by government agents, it will be used as an excuse to pass further legislative restrictions on what we're doing. I'm sorry that I'm such an interested party that I'm so cynical. I think it will only go that way. I just think that's the most likely story. But yeah, we have yet to see the kind of the media reactions to violent events with 3D printed guns, but they're coming.
Yeah, do you have any other perspectives on different ways of thinking about intellectual property? Because I know I'm somebody who does a lot of media with video, and things get yanked off YouTube because you've used this copyrighted content or whatever.
I've had up to 2 strikes before my account because I refuse to use open source music. I just use the music that I think is
what
and
fits.
they're big videos and everything. So in fact, they took my Liberator video down. It got 3 million views, and then Warner Chappell put in the claim with YouTube and they took it down. So it could have been this much bigger video, but because of copyright, it got stuck,
There's, I guess, Pirate Bay is the closest thing, but it isn't like there's one server out there where you can put something that's going to be secure.
Well, it's like the Pirate Bay guy said, why isn't there competition for what we're doing, right? They coordinate an enormous amount of torrent traffic, and it's not... There's this great guy in Spain that launched torrents.com, and so there's great movement still in the space, but the file sharing war is like, need you, young man. Go west and go share files. I think it is a form of activism, even if it's a kind of passive, lounge against the machine. The crypto wars are back. The Bitcoin is going to kind of supplement some of these file sharing wars, and I think the IP structures are crumbling in a recognizable way. I don't mean to say that it'll just kind of inevitably happen, that we'll just rid ourselves of it, but I don't know how to properly evangelize for it other than doing. We're kind of past talking. It's just time to do, and just kind of run right over these people and just begin sharing the information.
And I guess one final point is I imagine encryption is an important part of keeping secret a lot of the work that you're doing. Is there certain encryption softwares or tactics that you would encourage all people to engage in order to protect their information? Or?
I'm deeply cynical about even the effectiveness of PGP. I still kind of do it as just a kind of ritual of security or something, it just makes my conscience a little bit better that at least I tried in some sense to hide what we were doing. But very often we don't hide what we do in PGP. Early on we used Hushmail, and for some essential things, the Windows PGP, Win GPG or something. But for a crypto-anarchist, much less cryptography than you think, and much less crypto than you think. I just kind of naturally assume you have to be a bit ahead of them, and they'll catch you if they want.
And I guess to some extent, since what you're doing is a public project, publicity is actually a form of defense against some sort of government attack.
For what we're doing, crypto wasn't life or death, right? We're not like Ross Ulbricht, we're not working directly in the shadows trying to completely be unknown or unseen. In this kind of ironic sense, we wanted to be seen, wanted to be known, and in that regard, I had to tell you what I was going to do before I did it. I didn't need to hide the message, I needed to broadcast it. Cryptography didn't play a large role in that kind of activism.